Prairie Mosaic is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund with money from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008, the North Dakota Council on the Arts, and by the members of Prairie Public.
Welcome to Prairie Mosaic, a patchwork of stories about the arts, culture, and history in our region.
Hi, I'm Barb Gravel.
And I'm Bob Danback. On this edition, we'll meet an artist from Fergus Falls inspired by the Industrial Revolution, see the cutting edge of farming technology, and listen to the music of the String Man from St. Cloud. On the eve of World War I, there was a conflict in St. Paul and Minneapolis between streetcar workers and the Twin City Rapid Transit Company. It set the stage for the struggle to achieve the right of working people to organize in Minnesota and created national awareness of the plight of working men and women.
In the early 1900s, an organization called the Citizens Alliance is created, and it flows out of Minneapolis business owners. And they are working together to ensure that Minneapolis remains a town where union can't get much of a foothold.
People who were workers really understood that they were going to get shut down by this open shop movement called the Citizens Alliance. It was a pact among all the major employers in Minneapolis that they would cooperate internally amongst each other, that if any union tried to organize, they would be denied recognition and they wouldn't get anywhere. Workers didn't have protections. They could organize, but they would get stomped on if they organized.
The Citizens Alliance is not just this group of business people. Citizens Alliance is deeply embedded in the political structures of the city, in the economic structures of the city. It's the leading men of Minneapolis. They develop strategies for these moments when union organizers do come to Minneapolis and do try to start unions. Because of the ways in which they are able to flex their political and economic power, there are moments where they can actually engage strikebreakers if necessary. The Citizens Alliance is looking forward to trying to flex its muscle in St. Paul, but that doesn't happen until the 19-teens, and that only through particular circumstances that emerge because of events during World War I.
Over there, send the word, over there.
The Twin Cities Rapid Transit Company controls all the public transit in Minneapolis and St. Paul. They were able to take advantage of cheap labor by being resolutely anti-union. Because the Twin Cities Rapid Transit Company had been so bad to workers for so long, workers by 1916 and 1917 are becoming more and more frustrated, and by the fall, this is September 1917, they start thinking about figuring out how they're going to organize and how they're going to maybe even call a strike. If the streetcars are no longer running, no one can get anywhere. It's a pretty powerful way for workers to try to press back against business owners. And it affects not just the transit company, but companies of every kind in both cities.
The Citizens Alliance went to the municipal courts to get equity injunctions against trade union organizing. So if there was any kind of picketing, they would go to the courts and say, please get these people out of here because our business is in danger of being shut down and we're facing an emergency situation. That was the legal rationale. That a judge, using his power of equity, that is to say he could do something on an emergency basis, would simply say you can't banner this place or you can't stand outside. And if you do, what you're doing is a criminal conspiracy. We're going to arrest you and throw you in jail. So if you're sitting there in St. Paul or Minneapolis and you're thinking, you know, I think we ought to have a trade union, but people say that if I try to do that, I'm a criminal conspirator, this is really going to tick you off.
In some ways, this makes St. Paul labor organizations stronger, and it also gets them looking for allies. So it's the first time you have unions that are working across these city boundaries. So in September of 1917, you have a small-scale strike. A Minneapolis order is kept through the Citizens Alliance calling out their kind of quasi-law enforcement with this home guard made up of men in their 30s and 40s who are volunteers, who are armed, and who are meant to ensure that public order is kept during this wartime emergency. They ensure that there is no public disorder, that there aren't any marches or parades or much kind of union activity at all in Minneapolis. But in St. Paul, it's very different because there you don't have a Citizens Alliance, and business people are used to at least trying to work out their differences with union leaders. In St. Paul, the streetcars are disrupted, and that's a real problem. And so you have a large number of people in the streets, thousands of people in the streets. Eventually, a call for mediation is made. So the strike ends pretty quickly. The union doesn't necessarily get all of what it wants, but the company starts to engage in negotiations. But in the meantime, during a wartime emergency, any disruption to the public's business or to public infrastructure is deemed potentially undercutting the war effort. By November, the federal government is getting involved. Woodrow Wilson's administration in Washington, D.C. is saying, look, there's all kinds of stuff happening. These tensions are still simmering in St. Paul. And in Minneapolis, less is happening because the Citizens Alliance is able to literally control all the public spaces to keep union workers from organizing. And so in St. Paul, this simmering tension erupts again in December. In December, you have a large rally in Rice Park in St. Paul, attracts thousands of workers. You have public disorder. The Home Guard basically puts a stop to the strike and forces these workers to go back to work. Therefore, in Minnesota in 1917 and 1918, you get a variety of civil liberties that are trampled on. This was a real kind of shock to the system for St. Paul business people. First, to see so much public disorder in the streets, and second, the fact that union people wouldn't even be listened to, that they'd be shut down by law enforcement or quasi-law enforcement agencies. They realized that the Citizens Alliance has been able to extend its power into St. Paul in this way that no one really anticipated, largely because the industry that workers were striking in was something that connected the two cities. So this kind of violence on the streets not only attracted national attention, but made it clear that working people needed to have the opportunity, at least, to organize, and that the federal government maybe should actually provide workers with the right to organize a union. That had never been a federally recognized right for workers anywhere in the United States.
Carl Zachman's interest in the Industrial Revolution began at an early age when he became fascinated by the working of steam engines and stayed with him through his academic career. But it wasn't until he decided to pursue his interest in art that it all came together.
That's all of that. I was a kid that was always interested in history museums, model railroads and trains, threshing shows. I actually ended up getting my steam license, and I volunteer at different shows as I'm able and my schedule allows. The thing I love about stuff from the Industrial Revolution in general is that all of the moving parts are exposed. You can see how they work. It's a different world and a different time. Artwork I do is kind of a melding of all of my interests and passions for engineering, history, and art. My pieces, I guess, come to fruition in a couple different ways. Sometimes I start with a sketch or an idea in my head, and I work towards the end goal with something specifically in mind. Other times I will just cut out gears of different patterns and colors and sizes, and I start just rearranging things until I find something I like. It's more organic. Once that's done, I work out the technical details about, levels and planes and what spins where and how things move and what direction things are going to spin. And then I start working on the panels, what colors and textures, size, direction, things like that. I was always doing art. Growing up in a family with an artist, I was always drawing, I was always playing, I was always sculpting. When I was younger, my father had a ceramic studio, so I got to play with the clay and mold it and watch the firing process and all that kind of stuff. I was interested in sculpture and ceramics. I did some photography and things like that, but nothing was ever really set in stone as to what medium I would take. Just talking to my dad, we were thinking about directions that I was going to try the art thing, but I really hadn't, didn't have a solid concept. And we were talking about some of the steam shows and things like that and what my interests were. And my dad just, one of those comments, the little comments that's just off the cuff, says, you can make art out of gears. And I just that's it. I grabbed it. That's mine. I know exactly what I'm going to do. At arts festivals, I jokingly call my artwork engineer porn. In some of my artwork, I use gear patterns that have almost become extinct. Gears that are spiraled and nautilus shaped, squares, ovals, triangles, all these odd shaped gears and mechanical motions. Those are the ones that really, really excite me and that I love to enjoy because they move so interestingly. All of the gears I make myself. They are based off of historic patterns. First, the curved spokes, I actually spent about a month of evenings going through archival sources, trying to find out the proportions and why they were shaped the way they were and how they were shaped, just so that when I recreated them, I would get the proper look. And I realized that there's also proper directions to run them, that the ones with the single curve, you want the forces to go down the curve so it brings it all to the metal. If you run them backwards, the forces will be more likely to shave off the spokes and break them. You know, I may make something that's 4 spokes into 6 spokes or alter things here and there, but the general look, the feel, I work very hard to keep it as vintage looking as possible. Art is something that, to me, evokes thought and emotion and feeling. And, that can be the gamut from shock to disgust to affection to love. I try to invoke, in a way, a sense of wonder and a sense of nostalgia. With a degree in anthropology and archaeology, it's not just about the artifacts. As an anthropologist, I like the people watching. I get to interact with people. I get to watch them look at my work and see their reactions. I get to watch people smile and kids point and ask questions and get excited. And it's a wonderful thing. I've been doing this now for 4 to 5 years, and it's been slowly evolving and changing, and I'm not sure where it's going to go, but it can be a slow process. Some pieces go a lot faster than others, but it's something that I do enjoy. It is frustrating at times. A car mechanic will scratch his head bald in a spot at a time staring at your car, but it's one of those things that when you're all done, there's that sense of satisfaction that you've created something that didn't exist before and that you brought something from your mind into the world for people to enjoy.
Here's a segment from Prairie Public's documentary series, Built on Agriculture. It examines the role of modern machinery and farming experience in establishing a successful Manitoba farm operation.
When we look at what does it cost to outfit an average Manitoba farm, you're going to look at well over $1 million in new equipment, easily. Farmers are adopters. Farmers are innovators. They are continuously adopting and adjusting all the time. And a product, solution, service, technology provides a true value to a farm operation. It will be adopted very quickly. Precision agriculture, it's a bit of a mindset. It's the ability to measure, monitor every single task on a farm. And how do I attain the highest efficiencies out of every task, every operation on my farm? I know my cost of production, and how do I get the maximum yield, the maximum efficiencies, and eventually how do I control all the variables on my farm? If I can control it, how do I adjust it to make it work best for me and minimize my risks? You can't discount experience. It's still critical. Understanding the land capabilities and what it can do and can't do based on history and time still plays a critical role. I think what's changing is the amount of evidence, data that can now be collected, and that ability to do a more in-depth analysis and to look at what has changed on my farm over the last 10 years and what am I seeing? Has my soil changed? Has the weather changed? What has been the impact of the crop rotations that I have? That is all captured now through documentation, through the equipment. Two crops that have seen dramatic increases in acres would be corn and soybeans in Manitoba, and that sort of reflects the nature of farming, is that you continue to evolve, and whether it's weather patterns changing or the market's changing, growers, farmers will continue to adopt and adjust and look for where can I get the maximum efficiency out of my land, but also the profitability. 20, 30 years ago, the focal point of that tractor was the operator. Now on that tractor, the focal point of that piece of equipment is that monitor or that computer. That computer is running that piece of equipment now. And so the operator now is sitting and monitoring the activity of that tractor instead of driving it. The tractor will drive itself now.
I'm Brett Sheffield from Pilot Mound, Manitoba. In our area, we mostly grow wheat and canola. We also grow barley, and we're starting to grow some soybeans. But basically, we're planting and harvesting grain to sell as a commodity. I'd grown up on the farm and always enjoyed being in the country, but really until I'd moved away and realized kind of the opportunities and how much I enjoyed living in Pilot Mound and in the country, I hadn't realized that that's what I'd pursue for a career. I was lucky that my parents had a small farm when I came back, so I was able to run their equipment. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was able to get the crop in. Good prices and some good weather turned out well for me, and I've been able to expand constantly each year to now where I'm at the point that I can buy my own equipment. I was excited a few years ago we got our first tractor with air conditioning, so that was kind of nice, and now we've moved on to where we're running about 3 computer screens right in our cab. I came in when it was really a year before kind of this commodity price boom, and I was able to buy my land at a more affordable price. Since then, in our area alone, it's jumped about 300 to 350%. So that's helped my net worth, but as far as buying land goes, right now I can't afford it, so I'm leaning more towards renting and going that way to try to get cash flow early on in my farming career. I guess we're all risk takers because it's such a high input, high risk, weather variable industry that we're in. But I guess I've just constantly tried to expand, constantly tried new things, and taken things that I've learned at university and just tried to make those happen on the farm, and it's really helped me grow. I've been able to grow over 1,000% since I've started farming, so it's worked out really well so far. The business of farming now has completely changed. We've moved into auto steer, we've moved into beautiful tractors instead of open cab tractors, or even before that a horse and buggy. So it's making farming a really attractive business to get involved in. It's something that's really exciting, it's something that's fun to do, and really we're moving away from the lifestyle thing to more of a business. I think that one of the main trends that we're seeing is the increase in land prices is pushing us to do things to really increase our productivity on our current land base. Where before we were looking to expand and increase our overall productivity that way, now we're looking at what we can do to increase productivity on a per acre basis. And that's going to be able to help maintain growth of bushels to help feed the growing population. I'm extremely passionate about farming. It's something that I wake up every day thinking about. It's something that on my off time I spend time researching. It's just such an incredible industry to be involved in, where we're involved in every single part of our business. We're there for planting the seed, we're watching to make sure that it's growing, and we're there to harvest it. So in every single part of the business, we're able to sit there and be involved in it and watch something that we've done in the beginning of the year and see how it turns out in the output in the end.
Known as the String Man, Paul Emholt can play just about any stringed instrument imaginable. He's been composing songs about life in the Midwest for over 10 years. Enjoy the multi-talented Paul Emholt.
Rooster, rooster, on the tool shed, waiting for the break of day, when the farmyard shall be waking, knowing you've got something to say. Rooster, rooster, rough and ready, can't you wait until the morn? Rooftop rascal, sure unsteady, come alive to blow your horn. When the first light starts a-forming, night shadows disappear. Ragged trumpet of the morning, sounding loud and sounding clear. Rooster, rooster, on the tool shed, balanced on an old oak beam, wings outstretched in jubilation, wake the bullets from the dreams. Rooster, rooster, won't you tell me why you rise so early? In the kingdom of the hen house, what you say is what will be. Arise, my darlings, from your dreaming, for a new day has begun. Off to do a hen inspection, then your daily work is done. Rooster, rooster, on the tool shed, calling to your farmer friend. Cows are gathered for the milking, rise and shine, sleepyhead. Rooster, rooster, what's the secret, living in your country home? With but beauty all about you, the longing of your wishbone. Field and meadow, stream and pasture, barn and silo, this farm place. In the first light of the morning, the world stands in a state of grace. Oh, field and meadow, stream and pasture, barn and silo, this farm place. In the first light of the morning, the world stands in a state of grace.
If you know of an artist, a topic, or an organization in our region that you think might make for an interesting segment, please contact us at prairiemosaic@prairiepublic.org. I'm Bob Dambach.
And I'm Barb Gravel. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Prairie Mosaic.
Prairie Mosaic is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund with money from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008, the North Dakota Council on the Arts, and by the members of Prairie Public.